And hello, everybody. I'm hoping this is all working tonight. I've got the mic thing saying it's doing its thing, which is excellent. And obviously, a couple of you were hearing the music as well. So that means it's working. Hope it's working. Hope it's working. Hope it's working. I have been moving things around, which is always dangerous with computer stuff because it usually breaks things, I find. But anyway, hopefully you are all able to hear me okay, which is good. So yeah, so I have moved a few things about. One of the reasons for that will become plain in hopefully a couple of weeks. I've got a bit of a mysterious thing coming up, which I can't tell you about yet, but it is coming, and I've had to move a few things about because of it. So a few of you may have seen what I've been doing on Twitter, just getting a few bits and pieces just ready for more writing, which is a good thing, and hopefully actually more streaming as well. So I'm doing a few priority changes and various bits and pieces, which should give me a little bit more free time, which is always a good thing. So anyway, welcome to those of you on the stream. Who have I got here so far? Commander Terra Firma, we see and hear. Yeah. It's working, yes. A magnificent Mako, good to see you again. So I'm a network manager, never move anything. You're quite right. But it's always the network as well, isn't it? Certainly where I work, it's always the network that gets the blame first. Oh, the network's down. So it's not the network, it's not the network. So well, the software's down. Oh, it's not the software. It's not the software. Well, the web server's down. It's not the web server. It's always something, but it's never in your bit of the department. That's what I've always found working in IT anyway. So there we go. So that is stuff that's coming up. So yeah, so I'm hoping to do a bit more writing. Now, one of the things I've done is I've rejigged my environment here a little bit to make it easier for me to write, which is always a good thing. And part of that, and I can't really show you this because I can't need a mirror here. I can't figure out a way of doing that. I suppose I could get a mirror, but I haven't got one. To allow me to raise the laptop up. So I bought myself a rather natty laptop stand, which moves the laptop up to this sort of height, which is now same as my main monitor. Because for good posture, standing up straight and all that kind of thing, and sitting properly in your seat, typing it in length of time, you're supposed to have the top of your laptop, top of your monitor, roughly with your eyesight level. And the tendency is with laptops to look down and sit slightly too high, which isn't good for your posture overall. Particularly when you get to my age, you have to consider these things, because I get twinges in this and twinges in that if I'm not careful. I have had from writing, actually during, which book was it? I think it was Elite Reclamation, actually. I had repetitive strain injury in my wrists. I actually couldn't write for 3 weeks, which was a bit annoying because I just overdid it. Typing at work and typing on the train and typing at home. So I've got proper wrist rest and I have to do it properly now, which is all good health and safety stuff for writing. So if you do a lot of it, and to be honest, if you think about it, I'm just trying to work out, average book I've written is about 150,000 words. It's just, how many characters is that? I think that's about half a megabyte. So it's a lot of characters to just physically type. You are bashing your fingers. It's not a natural thing really for fingers to do, I suppose. I don't know if we're evolutionarily evolved to type. So your choice of keyboard and your choice of how you use your laptop and all those kind of things is actually quite important. And I found, particularly with a laptop, I'm bending my wrists in a little bit in order to type on a slightly smaller keyboard. So I did have to eventually buy myself a slightly bigger laptop in order to prevent that, so I could actually use a proper keyboard when I'm on the move. And then in this configuration, I've got the laptop set up there, so it's right in front of me, kind of acting as a monitor now when it's on its stand. And I've got a wireless keyboard here, which is a full-size proper motion keyboard, which I can now type using the magic of wireless or Bluetooth or something, and it pops up on the screen. So it's really, really good. And a wireless mouse as well, which is jolly handy. So it gives me a little bit more freedom. And that's kind of one of those just dynamic things about doing some writing, that you need to make sure you're comfortable. Because if you're going to be stuck somewhere for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, however long the muse takes you, if you're not sitting properly and if you're not typing properly, these things actually do build up and can cause you physical injury, which you definitely don't want to do as a writer. That's not a good thing. So so that's me wobbling on. Now you may have seen I have done a little bit of promotion this week. I launched a new video about my original Elite Dangerous book, Reclamation. So some of you may have seen that on Twitter. And part of the reason for that was I just came to the conclusion that after 4 years, there's probably a bunch of Elite Dangerous players never even heard of these books and wonder what on earth's going on if anyone mentions the book. So I thought, well, time to kind of re-energize that. So I put that out this week. That took me a few hours over the weekend. And promotion, actually, is a topic we will get to in terms of writing in a few weeks and months' time. So that will be a future topic to go. Thank you for seeing the video. Hopefully it kind of worked for you. I was trying to bring it up to date a little bit and talk about what the book was about, but also kind of use some of the great feedback I've had over the years from people who read the book. And I thought, well, might as well just use the really, really kind and nice things that people have said over the years, and stick them in a video to sort of promote it back again. So so that's good. That's another little piece of the puzzle that we're looking at as well. And hello Chris, good to see you. Sorry for being late, but Mad Dog was on one of his excellent rants. Yeah, those are good. I ought to do a rant at some point. I'm not really a ranty person though, so there are a few things I can get upset about, I'm sure. But when he's in rant mode, Mad Dog's having lots of fun, so that's good. Glad you enjoyed. I have to pop over there at some point. That'd be really good. So what else have I been doing this week? I was off ill at the end of last week. That wasn't much fun. I had an ear infection. Not quite sure where I got it from. And actually, I'm going to be working from home tomorrow because I've got to have my ears syringed. I have no idea what that means. It doesn't sound great. Apparently, I've got a bit of a wax build-up in my left ear, and last week it was in a bad way, and I couldn't find my balance, and I was feeling ill, and I couldn't hear anything, which was driving my family potty, which was quite funny. When I actually do go deaf in the future, I'm going to have great fun. But this was just a bit of an ear infection, and it wasn't very pleasant at all. So I've got to have my ear syringed apparently tomorrow, which sounds presuming they spray water into your ear or something. Doesn't sound great. So I'll find out, and I'll let you know what that's like. I'm not sure that's got anything to do with writing, but there we go. Never mind. So anyway, today's topic is world building. And what do I mean by world building? Well, it's the sort of bit that goes on when you're creating your novel. I've had my ears done. It's weird but painless. Okay, that's reassuring. I don't like pain very much. It's weird but painless. Okay, well I can probably go with weird but painless. That sounds good. World building. So it's the bit of the creation of your environment that you need in order to tell your story. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of this stuff. Because and probably the most classic guy is Mr. Tolkien himself. Probably world building to excess, I would say. But he's a good example of the sort of things that you might want to consider. So obviously Tolkien is primarily in this case a fantasy author. That wasn't exactly all he wrote, but obviously he's most famous for it. So if we pop across to my desktop, there we go. Hopefully you can all still see me. Apologies that these view swaps wipe out the stream chat, so I can still see it, but you guys can't. So Magnificent Mac has just gone, ooh, well building, yay. Oh, and hello, Sunseal UK. Good to see you. Hello, sorry, I'm late. Looking forward to hearing about world building. Excellent. Well, we're just about to start, so because I've been waffling on for a while about ears being syringed and general woes in my life, so you haven't missed anything yet. So I've just popped up the Wikipedia here page for Middle Earth, which of course is Tolkien's realm. And Tolkien took a very unusual way. Now, he was a professor of linguistics, I believe, and he kind of did the language first for all his fictional characters. And as it says here, he picked up 2 Elvish languages, Quenya and Sindarin, and then built the continent, and then kind of built the history around it. And you're probably, I would hope, I imagine, all familiar with kind of Middle Earth, certainly in outline, either having read the books or seen the films. But the sheer amount of stuff that he built is actually quite remarkable. He wrote an awful lot more about his world in terms of world building than he actually did writing books, which is probably it's not the route to kind of that perhaps you would take today. He was obviously just passionate in the world building, so it's worth having a look at the level of detail that he did. So you've got a language first. So he's doing a language for Elvish. He's multiple languages. So he's very much into that. Obviously, the kind of etymology of the elves and where they came from. So they were the first race, I believe he calls them about. And then he goes into how men appeared and how the dwarves were an offshoot of something else. He also goes into the gods of his realm. He has a creation myth, which is very, very different to many of the other creation myths you have, although you do have a kind of supreme being and lesser kind of powers in his mythology. You have a vast history. He divides it into ages. So you have first age, second age, third age, and the third age is where most of his stories are set, though not all of them. And then there's a fourth age, which happens kind of after the main events, which is brought to a beginning, if you like, by the events that he actually writes of. So The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings form effectively the end of the third age. And he has all this stuff written out, and he goes into really the nth degree of detail about this kind of structure, this history, you know, the languages, the characteristics of all the races that he has. He doesn't just say, "All right, I need some elves, and they've got pointy ears, and that'll do." He invents a language, and a language that is so sophisticated it would actually work. He's not just gone and, like some authors do, just like, right, I need some elvishy sounding words, let's make them all sort of swishy and lovely, and that's kind of elvish, and let's get some dwarves and make some hard words, and that's kind of dwarves, and let's make some ugly words, and that would be orcish. You know, he's actually gone through and worked out how the language actually would be constructed with vowels and, you know, nouns and verbs, adverbs, and all the other constructions that you need in the language. That's very excessive. I'm not sure I would ever go to that length of detail unless I was utterly fascinated by something. But Tolkien was, and that was the reason why he did all that. He just loved doing that. Creating and structuring his fantasy realm was what he was all about. That's what he did to kind of, you know, I guess kind of relax almost. You know, he got into that so much. So, you know, history. Of not only the land but the people, the languages they spoke, how they interacted with each other, what their heroes and heroines were, and also the epic quests and the stories that gave those people their myths, so that the people in the Third Age could look back at the events of previous ages and use that as mythology for themselves. So there was almost a mythology within inside a mythology that he constructed, tried to keep it all kind of together. And that's before you get onto the wonderful maps and geography of Midnight. I'm getting my fantasy novels confused. Middle Earth. Let's stick with Tolkien for a moment. So, you know, you've got here his my internet connection will load. There we go. You know, Middle Earth, a geographical land that's sort of Europeanish, really. It's obviously not Europe, but it's got that kind of flavour to it. You know, you've got mountain ranges, you've got forests, you've got you know, rivers, you've got lakes, you've got all sorts of features, and they have all got their bits of history associated with them, how they've changed hands and how they became to be. And you've got lonely mountains here and the long lake. The Shire is over here, and then you've kind of got the hobbits themselves. Where do they come from, and what's their history, and why are they the way they are, and all those kind of stuff. And Tolkien used all that background detail then, once he'd done vast amounts of it, and you're talking years and years and years and years and years of work here, before he was even in a position to write stories, to then, you know, make the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit come alive. And you know, he ended up doing a lot of work. You can see, I mean, this is my copy here. These are not small books, you know. These are chunky novels, and that's just the Lord of the Rings. So you've also got over here, the Hobbit is you know, the entry level one. It's much smaller, and the Silmarillion, which is if you haven't read this one, this is sort of more about the Second Age, whereas the other two are the Third Age, and will be a little bit more familiar. The Silmarillion is mostly the tales of the Second Age, but with a massive appendix, really, of all the stuff that kind of preluded the Third Age. So he'd worked all that sort of stuff out, how these ages all kind of connect up and do things. And the thing I love about it is that the I don't know if you can see this too well on the camera, but from there, this bit of the book here, right to the end, so we're talking, which page are we on? 374, all the way to 400 and something, is just the index of names. So, I mean, I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully let's put it close to the camera, maybe you can see that. There's page after page of just characters and who they are and what they did, which I've got no idea how anybody can possibly remember. And how he worked all this out and how he made it consistent. I mean, I struggle in my books. I mean, my Shapewood saga, which is probably the largest one I've got, and I've probably got maybe 20, 30 characters by this point, which feels like a lot to kind of keep imagining. But, you know, this is, I mean, 20 and 30 doesn't even do you the letter A. There are 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of names that just begin with A. It is phenomenally complex, the world that he made, and in some ways, I guess that's why people love it, because realistically, there's no individual anywhere really, unless you spent years, and you could probably study this like a degree or a master's in this subject, because there is so much detail. And and it's it's tough going actually in some places because of that complexity. There's so much. Um, so much stuff in here, and if you're into it, it's really good. But if you're not, I mean, and the other thing, look, he does family trees of all the main characters, and some lesser characters that maybe have a paragraph in it, and it just goes on and on and on. It's all full of stuff. It's more complicated than real life. um, so there's incredible detail that he went to, and he did this over decades. Fair play to the guy, and a vast amount of detail, which allowed him to write some astonishingly complicated stuff and have characters refer to other characters who did things and so on and so forth. And if you look at Lord of the Rings, if you read Lord of the Rings today, you'll find various parts of it are quite, by modern standards, quite stodgy. They're quite slow. They're quite long-paced because there is a lot of detail. There is a lot of backstory in those sort of things, and it takes time for him to kind of work through it. People had more time, I think, to read books back then, and it is hard to absorb. That comment by sorry, I just missed it. Terra Firma read the Silmarillion twice and still felt like I couldn't absorb it. It is very, very complicated. The number of characters and the events and the situations, it's huge, absolutely huge, and he's built myths and built myths and built myths and built myths on top of myths and stuff like that. It's really quite excessive. But if you're a fan of Tolkien, of course, then you can go back and start looking at things and and really dive into that thing. And people really do like that. If you're a fan of a book or a series or a film or a computer game, we all know about the Law and Elite Dangerous. If you're into it and you're fascinated by it, you will want to do it. I remember reading, and just going through and studying it and go, that's what connects to that, and that can be very, very satisfying to people who are into your environment. So it is a thing. It is something that you can really find a niche set of people who are really, really interested in doing it and appreciate the level of detail you go into. Now, Tolkien is probably right at the top end of lots of world building. I wouldn't recommend you taking several decades to work out your fantasy realm or your science fiction realm before you actually start doing any writing. But if you flip down to the opposite end, if you don't do enough world building, then your story will feel very shallow and probably quite trite. And we've probably all read, books whereby the characters end up in, the city. Okay, well, why is there a city there? Well, it's just the city. Everyone knows it's the city. It's the city. Okay, so why is the city here? Well, it's there because that's where the city is. Why wouldn't there be a city there? And he said, well, a city has a reason to exist. Maybe it's on a river, or maybe it's a port, or maybe it's a trading place. And once you think it's a trading place, okay, well, what's it trading with, and who's it trading for, and is there any basics to the economy that's going on? And many fantasy novels and science fiction novels just sort of make a situation without putting any supporting structure in place. And if you don't have that, it can feel a bit kind of, well, why don't they just go down the road a bit and then they'll be safe? Or why don't they fly to the next planet? Because if they're there, then and if you don't do that thinking, you can easily trip yourself up by a plot hole. Come on, Terraform again. I just started rereading the Fellowship this week. Laughed at the dialogue in the first chapters. I've forgotten about the hobbits and speculating about the coming part. Yeah, so it's funny, and there's lots of bits in Tolkien. The one that always gets me is the whole Bombadillo bit, which they wisely, I think, missed out in the films entirely. Which is what was going on there. That was just kind of like really kind of odd. Magnificent Mako. I have a different interest in worlding because I have been a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons game. Yes. And instead of using an existing setting, I've created my own world. Thinking about why things are where is definitely something I've sat down and done. And it's very important. Very, very important to do because it has to have some logic to it. Even if it's magical or if it's science fiction, it has to have some logic to it. So, if you've got a trading port, who is it trading with? Is it trading overseas? In which case, what's on the other side of the sea? How is it trading? Are they trading goods in exchange for what? So Okay, if they've got a surplus of grain, why have they got a surplus of grain? All those sort of things need to. You don't need to go to the nth degree, work out every facet of the economy. You need to do enough for the characters that are there to go, oh yeah, well, we had a really bad summer this year and we haven't got enough grain, so we've got a bit of a financial crisis going on, or something like that, in order to make the kind of world specific. And you can't just then fabricate things up. So if you have a trading port, it needs to be trading with a trading partner. Who's on the other side of the ocean? Are there any pirates who would take advantage of that? Because then you can build all those kind of bits around it. There are lots of little bits about world building again that folks tend to kind of get wrong as well. Oh, and hello there, Alpha Epic 11. Good to see you. I'm sorry I'm late. Did not get your notification. Oh, that's weird. I don't know if that's anything I have to do. Normally it does it automatically, so sorry about that. But it is on. We are here. Hello. So yeah, the other one I like to talk about in terms of world is the horse problem. This is a classic one in fantasy books. Is people forget what horses can and can't do, which kind of ties back to our talks about research earlier on, treat a horse like a car, i.e. you can just drive it around and recharge it in a couple of minutes and it's good to go for another couple of days. Horses aren't cars and cars aren't horses. So if your people get around by horse, there's a limit to how far they can go in a day, unless they've got spare horses. So you have to find out what is the capability there and kind of do that. And then if you're going to have elves or dwarves or orcs or anything like that in your fantasy realm, then you need to figure out, are they Tolkien-esque ones? And you're probably wise to stick to them if you're using those names. But if you're going to use something else, you've got to find a way to figure out how did they get to where they are. People don't have wars between continents, for example, without usually a very, very good reason. And that could be economic, it could be conquest, it could be, it could just be aggression. But there's usually a reasonably sound reason why organisations go to war with each other, and you need to kind of figure out why would that be in your kind of land. And if there is a way to circumvent that attack in some way, then people will pursue it. So were there some diplomacy going on prior to the event that you're talking about? Those kind of things are all quite important to world building, and check that they're consistent and follow through. Pull the thread. Ask yourself the why question about 4 times. So, right, my 2 peoples are going to war. Why? Because they hate each other. Why? Because somebody stole some land a decade before. Why? Because that land was economically valuable because it had a thing in it. Why? Because that economic thing was a great source of power or something. Okay, now you're beginning to get somewhere. The 5 whys is quite a useful technique to kind of drill down a few times and justify to yourself why you are making a thing happen in your world. And if you do that enough times in different areas, you're sort of about to build up a bit of a picture. So that's a very useful technique. So in today's society, walking is really overestimated. Just a few kilometers can easily take half an hour to walk. Yeah, I mean, actually, I was walking in the Peak District on holiday in the summer, and we were climbing a reasonably steep hill, not outrageous. We were in walking boots, but it wasn't. You could have done it in trainers without too much difficulty. But it was, for me, it was a pleasant amount of walking, and I thought we were going quite fast, felt quick-ish. We were breaking a sweat and we were kind of climbing like that. But we were averaging about 2.5 miles an hour, according to the GPS, which felt a bit naff. It didn't feel like we were making very much pace at all. But when you work out you're walking up a hill and then down a valley and walking up and having to stop for stiles and climb over rocks and stuff, 2.5 miles an hour isn't actually too bad at all. But, I certainly wouldn't want to do that for 10 hours a day. And certainly not do it again the following day. I think we probably did about 10 miles that day, and that was enough. And that took us, like I say, about 4 or 5 hours to do with a stop for lunch. And we did 10 miles. It doesn't get very, very far on the map of Middle Earth or anything like that. It was quite good. So, and if you're carrying all your provisions, which we weren't, because we knew we had a coffee place at the end of the trek. how far you can walk carrying a pack of stuff. Yes, I mean, people in fantasy novels are generally seem to be an awful lot fitter because they can carry armor and swords and backpacks and enough tents to live in for months on end. But you've got to make sure your characters, are semi-realistic in that sort of sense. How far can you actually walk? That's a good point. Sunsail UK, if a place has a harbour, for example, and there's a harbour for trading, because you want it to have, but it doesn't have anything to do with the story, would explaining who it trades with and what it trades would be classed as slightly pointless. Well, yes, it could be, but you don't have to put that in the story. So it might be pointless waffle in the story, but you don't have to put it in the story. So you might want to put it together just so you know how that trading mechanism works. And that's the world building. So there'll be an awful lot of stuff in your world building that you won't use in your story, but you might later on. But it helps your world to become kind of internally consistent. So if you've got a trading city, you don't need to overtly go about it in the story. But when you get to the story, you can have a character just drop in a oh yeah, well, the so-and-sos across the sea, yeah, they're just upping their prices every single year, making things really, really difficult. You can use that just to allude to there is another place which you might go and visit in some other story, and that might be all you need, but at least you've made that internally consistent, and your readers will notice those little details. They go, the author has just thought a little bit about what's going on over the edges of the book, if you like, or over the edges of the map. They haven't just plonked a city down for the sake of doing so. And if you repeat that exercise across all the elements that you're using, you're even indirectly referencing your story, readers will notice, and it will help make your book feel that much more kind of cohesive and structural. Dungeons & Dragons isn't writing novels, but you are writing a living tale. Yes, you are. It's you don't need to write down intricate details in case the players ask for something and I didn't have the answer. Yeah, so Dungeons & Dragons is much, much harder, actually, I think. Because at least the novel, you can say, no, we're not going over there. Whereas Dungeons & Dragons, your players can go, right, your quest, we're not doing that. No, that trading city that's across the water that you haven't done much work on, that sounds like a really interesting place for us to set sail for and go over there. And then you have the sort of hand of God sometimes to kind of move them back to where you want them to be. So if you haven't thought about those details in the Dungeons and Dragons setting, then you need to flesh out their kind of arrangements. The technique I've used in the past doing those sort of things is make sure that your players are in the start in the center of your realm, and that you've kind of peppered the outside of it with things that either direct them back to the plot that you kind of want them to get involved in, or there are sub things that they can kind of get involved in or around the else. Alpha Epic 11, what is interesting to see flat-footed people that have never climbed a hill, always lived in the city because their feet are never used to going up an angle, so climbing gets extra hard, especially for people who live in flat cities. Yeah, so it's interesting how some people react to let's go for a walk. Really? Now, I actually quite like walking just for fun, because I like to get to the top of the hill and see the view and sit down, have a cup of tea from a flask, and then climb all the way down again. That's quite a nice way to spend the day, as far as I'm concerned. But some people would look at that and go, "That's an entirely pointless activity. Why on earth would you want to do that?" And for me, it's just a sense of exploring somewhere and going somewhere. If you're not used to walking, and you're not used to climbing, it can be actually quite painful. If your feet and your muscles generally are not used to doing that sort of stuff. So I have situations in my book, and again, it's part of the world building, more the character building actually. If you go on a quest in your fantasy novel, you may have some people who are not physically fit for that quest, and they're sort of whinging and complaining that their bones ache at the end of the first day, and that nobody in the rest of the party is giving them any sympathy at all, which can make for some fun character interactions. So you can sort of use that sort of stuff in there as well. And trading is interesting because no city has the same goods. Well, otherwise there would be any trade, would there? So if you're going to have people with different things, and then you can sort of start world building into that. So if you've got an organisation that is very agricultural, and then using their excess of agricultural supplies to buy luxury goods, how come the city that they're getting that from, or the opposite trading partner, how come they have an access of luxury goods? Do they have lots of craftspeople there? If they've got lots of craftspeople there, have they got a guild, or have they got some kind of university? Why have they got a university? Again, that why? The 5 whys technique is really, really good at just going down that little bit further to go, okay, well, why have they got that? Why? And then just keep asking the same thread, the whys, and it will lead you into all sorts of interesting little bits of detail. So, give you an example of that. I've got here some of the shadewood stuff that I did. Where am I? I'm in the research. Should be here. Is that the one I want? No, it's the map. Where am I going? It should be under research. Why isn't it in there? Overview. No, that's the map. Notes. Can't even find me in books. There we go. I'm in the wrong folder. That's why. Shadewood Saga background and detail. There we go. So let's move that onto the right page so you can see it. So here, I've gone into some sort of background around it, just because I needed to know what happened before. And so I have decided on a red dwarf for various reasons. It's been colonized 2,000 years before the story starts, along with a few other places. And there was some kind of catastrophic disaster in the solar system, resulting in a rushed emergency evacuation, the details of which could be addressed in a prequel, because I haven't done that bit of the world building yet. And I will at some point, but I kind of made a note to myself there that's basically as much of the background to that bit that I've done right now. I don't need it for the stories that I'm taking at the moment, other than there is something that happened in the background. But there's a piece of world building there that I do need to do. However, the immediate focus for my series of books is that this place has been colonized, and it's a strange world. It's tidally locked, so we've got all sorts of unusual atmospheric weather condition things and a few other problems as well. So I made a decision with Shadewood that I wanted a different type of planet, tidally locked, changes the weather, changes the way that things work. So the whole north-south-east thing, north-south-east-west doesn't work. I need to have an alternative. The same with time. Time doesn't work on a tidally locked world because the star stays in the same place in the sky all of the time. So there are no seasons, there are no days and nights. So there's got to be another way of telling time. So I had to work that out as well. I also came up with all sorts of different creatures. So here is all the flora on my world. So I've gone into a bit of description about the different types of plants and things that you can find on this planet as well. And I've done the same with various different creatures as well. So you may want to indulge yourself here. Now I've took the decision with Shadewood that I would have creatures that were sort of analogous to Earth creatures, so that there'd be some elements of familiarity, but they will all have their own different names. And I took my reasoning behind these names basically as corruptions of known Earth words. So Marsip is a corruption of marsupial, as an example. Canar is a corruption of canis, or the Latin word for dog. So to give you an idea, it's a wolf-like creature. A Herg has just overtones of a labouring, heavy-duty animal, and a Faunt, which you'll come across in Shadewood 3, is a corruption of elephant. So there's some elements of familiarity and things in those kind of things to kind of give the readers a little bit of clue as to what they're dealing with, which is something that I use. Take something, make it slightly unfamiliar, change a few things, but keep an essence of the familiar in order to ground the reader in what you're doing. Another comment, sorry. Writing about sites can be interesting, and their history can colour a lot. Yep, that's a very good point. Just as an example, my town was for hundreds of years a mining town with smelters all over the countryside. And the region is so iron rich that you can even see veins of iron ore in the cobblestones. So that gives you the basics of an economy. It could give you the basics of the type of people who live there. They could be miners, or they could be descendants of miners, or they could have economic problems when the mines dry up, or there's a cheaper source of iron ore from somewhere else, or all sorts of things that you can kind of play around with it. So that's kind of there's a comment there. So busy listening to my dinner. Sorry about that. That's quite funny. Well, not for you. I hope your dinner's okay, actually. I hope you hasn't burnt it too badly. Hope it's still edible. That's priceless. Sorry about that. It did make me. You've made my day. Anyway, I hope that makes you feel better. That did make me laugh. That was funny. So sorry about that. Hope your dinner's okay. So yeah, so and I've taken that business about the idea. What the occupations? What do people do when they're not adventuring in your fantasy realm? Or in Elite Dangerous, what do the people do when they're not flying the spaceships around the galaxy? What do they do on their downtime? Is that actually their day job, or do they do something else? People aren't just always going on quests. So in Lord of the Rings, what do the hobbits do most of the time when they're not going on quests? Well, it appears that they sit around smoking, drinking beer, and tending their gardens. Seems to be what they do. What does Gandalf do when he's not got some horrendous evil to battle? What about Aragorn? You've been patrolling the world around. What happens in Gondor when there isn't a fight on? What are those towns and cities and places and things like? What do the elves do when they're not, making snarky comments about the dwarves? What do they do? What's their day look like when there isn't an urgent, invasion? All those sorts of second breakfast. That's brilliant. Yes, that's what the hobbits do. The Levinses. Very good, guys. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's what the hobbits do. Obviously, just eat, and drink beer. It comes in pints. Oh, that was my favourite line from that film. This is a pint. So that's fabulous. So yeah, but that's So in your world, and going back to Chris's comment, he's got some miners. Okay, well, presumably they do mining during the day. Do they sing songs in the evening? Do they go down the pub? What do they do? And what disrupts their routine that makes your story interesting, for example, all those sort of things. So thinking about occupations, which brings me nicely onto my topic here, because occupation is exactly what I've got in this next section. So what do these people do? How does the world work? It comes in pints. That was funny. Yeah. So in Shadewood, you've got the priestesses who are religion. You've got timekeepers. There are workers, traders, farmers, soldiers, scholars, engineers, mariners, and fishers. So you might want. You don't have to, and if you don't need this information or it feels really tedious to you, then don't do it. But if you do it, you'll find there are some rewards in doing it, because you'll suddenly start to fix things and resolve things. Go, oh yeah, I've got that detail. I can bring that into the story. And trust me, your readers will appreciate good world building. The vast amount of stuff in here. This is Shadewood, kind of the Bible for Shadewood. This is 17,000 words. That's longer than a short story. That's almost a novella length thing in itself. And that's just the world building. The vast amount of this in here will not appear in the story at all, because I don't need to refer to it in the story, but I need to have gone and done some of the work in order to make the story compelling. It's a fine balance, but trust me, your readers will appreciate the world building, and you'll appreciate when you're writing a story, because you can go back, yes, my city here now has this element to it and that element to it, and your readers will go, when you put this together, it really feels like a real place. And that attention to detail matters if you're going to craft a really, really good story. So don't go past the world building. It's fine. It's taters, boiled and mashed and stuck them in a stew. Yeah, it's lovely. I do like the hobbits, and the Shire is sort of almost feels a bit like West Sussex to me, or maybe Surrey, in the 1930s. It's kind of that sort of rolling English countryside with dappled sunny afternoons in the early autumn, when there's plenty of beer around and not much work to do, it's a thing. That's what the Shire is like. It's kind of relaxed. It doesn't seem to rain there. It's a lovely green and pleasant kind of Garden of England type sort of experience, which of course is trashed by the events of Lord of the Rings. That sort of stuff is important. And that's a good point, actually, Magnificent Macca. Yes, if you don't use it when you become rich and famous, you can release the information as appendices and elaborately bound books. Well, you can, yeah. I had a lot of interest in some of the background stuff I did for Elite Reclamation. I gave that away for free as a kind of PowerPoint presentation, but a lot of downloads of it, because people were just interested in the mechanism I went about to kind of generate that sort of stuff. People do get into it. People do get into it if they like what you do, and they like the environments you build, and they like the stories you tell. They want to know what's going on behind the scenes. And if there isn't anything behind the scenes, that can be a bit disappointing for them. If you can have a little, it doesn't have to be the entire thing. You're not asking you to write an end-to-end Wikipedia of your entire world, but if you can put a little bit about the different places in there, it really helps. And differentiate things, maybe differentiate the architecture, different types of people who live there, differentiate the histories behind the places. So maybe there was a big battle, but maybe it was 20, 30 years ago, and some people are not all that familiar with it because it's kind of dropping into memory rather than being a current event. All those sort of things are quite important. Do you ever go back to your world building document, add or modify it after you started writing? If so, then I guess you have to make sure you've reviewed your prior writing, make sure. Yes, you do. I tend to try and avoid that. I spend a lot of time just sort of, I suppose, arsing about really before I start writing the actual story. Or I write bits of it in the story that don't really need too much of the world building background, maybe an argument or a fight about something, which doesn't need the scenario to be kind of played out, and then I can maybe develop the backstory a little bit around it. So I tend to develop my world building, quite a lot of it I do it in advance. I'd probably say 60-70% of it I do before I start writing, and then the last 30 is a bit more organic. It tends to develop when I go through, hang on, they're going to go over there, and I haven't really done that bit, so I need to figure out what that kind of bit looks like, and I'll go and do a little bit more world building around there. For example, the good example of that is this background bit here. Something happened before Shadewood, and I've just done a vague catastrophe, a couple of thousand years before, but I haven't penciled in exactly what that catastrophe is. I got in my head a few ideas as to what I want it to be, but I haven't worked it out yet in detail because I don't need it. I don't need it to tell the story of Shadewood. When I get the prequel to Shadewood, which I've got kind of pegged in the future, then I will go and do that bit of world building. So the document will expand. But I tend to do enough world building to kind of keep me going on that sort of place. And if you compare and contrast with the Elite Dangerous one, so if we go back to Reclamation for a moment, where's that? Dangerous Reclamation, plot and approval. There we go. So in this one, you can see I had some of the information from Frontier as to the locations, but I did go into here and work out what they were and where they were going, and I worked out and I wrote down which ships I was planning to use and what their names were, so I can remember that was consistent. I did the characters and all that sort of stuff, but the world building is less, as you can see. There's a bit of constructural stuff about the star systems and anything else that's going on as well. I summarise some of the background of Elite for my benefit and editors and so on, those sort of things. A bit about the politics and technology and the people, but we did have the writers' guides that had done a lot of that for us. So there was a vast amount of world building already there that we were kind of referencing in that case. So it was much lighter weight from my perspective for Elite Reclamation than it would be for Shadewood. Yep, David Eddings, for example, put out a book about the world and the Riven Codex or something like that, and the same with Terra Press. Yeah, because people are interested. Don't underestimate if you do write a series of books, and I'm beginning to get it with Shadewood now. I get quite a lot of email queries from people saying, "Why does the XYZ work like this?" And sometimes those questions go, "He's got a point there." Might be a plot hole. I might have to think about that. But quite a lot of the time, you've got the answer in your world building. Oh yeah, well we haven't discovered that yet because I haven't written that in Shadewood 3 or 4, whatever it happens to be, and you will find that out in a future book. So the world building can really help with those kind of consistent things, really kind of flesh those kind of things out. So a lot of the authors will do it. They'll do it to a greater or lesser extent, depending on how much you need to tell the story that you're in. But you probably want to do enough to tell the story and then do a bit more, because you'll find that if you do that little bit more, then your story will feel like it's enclosed in something safe. If your story doesn't have enough world building, it's sort of a bit like, to use a Lord of the Rings quote, it's like not enough butter spread over too much bread. It will feel stretched, as if you haven't quite, it's almost like your characters are walking around and then suddenly someone hasn't painted the edge of the world, everything's turned into a kind of line art, and it's kind of, well, is this the edge of the world or something? The author hasn't created enough material there. And It gives you an opportunity for your characters to have conversations like, oh yeah, my father was around in the Battle of X, Y, Z, and he said that the so and so's were this, that, and the other. And it can be a throwaway comment in the dialogue, but it will make your readers think, oh, so the Battle of so and so happened then, and that meant that the shift of the politics happened like that. And they will think, and they will quite often go off in all sorts of places that you didn't consider. But it does make them go, so there's something that happened before where we are now that these people know about, that I'm going to have to pick up by listening to their conversations. It makes you, as the reader, listen more carefully to the dialogue you put in. So you need to make your world building hook up with your characters and hook up with your characterization as well, and the dialogue that you do. And if you get those kind of bits right, you can make it very, very compelling for the reader, because the reader will go, so-and-so character clearly lived through those times and has been affected by them. He's dropped in little snippets of conversation. I remember well, you weren't there, young. Maybe he's talking to a young person. You weren't there when the so-and-so's invaded. I saw them for real. All those sort of things. And you can just leave it like that in the tantalizing dialogue, and your readers will go, oh, the thing. And you may have worked that out in your world building. So if you do the world building, don't give it all away in the book, but use the world building to infuse your dialogue and your characters with interesting little tidbits that will keep the readers going, why did he say that? And why is he wary of going into the land over there? Because something must have happened in the past then. So what was that thing? And then maybe you can reference it again. And that helps build your world building into your story in such a way that your readers will go, there must be more clues about what happened back then. That must be important. And that's the art of putting a novel together, is to use all those elements to drive the tension, drive the suspense, and go, and that's why your readers will come back to it and love it. And they'll want to know more and more and more about the world that you're creating. And yet you can hide a mystery in the backstory and only give hints to it. So absolutely you can. So, the classic, let's take Elite Dangerous. The classic one is Raxler. The amount of information that is genuinely available about Raxler is minuscule. It only exists canonically, as far as I'm aware, in the Dark Wheel, which was the book that came with Elite in 1984. There are no references to it in Frontier Elite 2. There are no references to it in Frontier First Encounters. So you're talking about a mystery there, which was seeded by the original author, Robert Holdstock, in 1984, 1985, and people are still talking about it now because it's been kept alive as a bit of mythology, and it's been referenced a few times in relation to, obviously, Elite Dangerous. And the Dark Wheel that's connected to the Raxler mystery has appeared in Elite Dangerous. I'm pretty sure that the word Raxler itself hasn't yet been found referenced in the game, but there are clues pointing to it. And we know that Frontier likes a mystery, so they've kind of alluded to the fact that yes, obviously it's there in some form or another, and it will be revealed when it's revealed. And that's as far as they've publicly gone with it. So those sort of things stick with readers, stick with players, stick with people who interact with things. In terms of Tolkien, where did the ring come from and what are its powers was alluded to in The Hobbit, but we didn't really understand what it was about. All we knew with The Hobbit was that it made you invisible. It wasn't until Lord of the Rings that we discover actually it's a horrible evil device that this vast, mighty, evil individual poured his life essence into in order to subjugate all the other rings and powers in the world as well. It's just a magic ring that makes you invisible, as far as The Hobbit's concerned. But there's tantalizing little clues in The Hobbit. Bilbo begins to get possessive over the ring and lies to Gandalf out of character, even in The Hobbit, which give you a subtle clue that not all is right about this ring, and it's a magic ring, as Gandalf says. They're quite unusual. So, where did you get it from, and etc., etc. So you can see all those bits begin to build up, and that's the challenge for you as a writer, is to use those elements, do the world building. So in Tolkien's case, magic ring, it's made by an evil force. It was designed to subjugate all the other rings. When Bilbo finds it, all we find out about it is its immediate effect. It makes you invisible. and maybe a very, very subtle clue about what it does. And that's all you get in The Hobbit. So you're left at the end of The Hobbit going, that ring's a little bit strange. And it seems to slip off his finger accidentally, as if it doesn't quite want to be there. So has the ring got a life of its own? You know, and those questions start to buzz around in your head. So, and I wonder if Tolkien knew in The Hobbit that this ring had that hidden origin. That's a good question. I don't know. Sometimes you're in a situation where you have to retrospectively adjust your world building because you're looking for a hook for the next book or the next Dungeons and Dragons adventure or the next game or whatever it happens to be. And you can go and use that thing with a bit of creative imaginary in order to kind of move on. So I think you're probably right, Chris. I think he always planned for the ring to have that power, because he spent all these decades, creating his world before he started writing the books. So I think Tolkien probably did go into that length, but some other authors won't. And sometimes you can use a hook like that and go, aha, there's a thing that I didn't use very much, but with a little bit of creative juggling behind the scenes for my world building, I can turn it into this bigger thing. And sometimes it's the fans who do that, because the fans will go and speculate on all sorts of stuff. So if you write a successful first book and then you put some throwaway things in it which you haven't really considered all that much, and the fans then go, oh yeah, but what about the thing? The thing that's got to be significant. Oh, in the next book it's all going to come true. And you've seen this with Star Wars. There was an awful lot of disappointment from a lot of fans in the latest film, because in The Force Awakens, of course, we're given this, well, who's Snoke? Who's this guy who's risen from the ashes of the Empire to become the kind of top Sith? And Rey, we don't know who her parents are. Who are her parents? Are they Force users? What happened there? What's her relationship to Han Solo? And all those sort of questions. Fans love speculating. They always do it. My father, hope you're not. He's dead. that would be very spooky. Those sort of things are really, really good. But you've and I do feel a little bit sorry for the makers of what's next from the Last Jedi, because sometimes that fan speculation is just utterly in the wrong direction. And you have to trash their expectations because that's not what I wrote, that's not the way it goes, and you've made the wrong assumption. But on the flip side, you do have to be sympathetic to your fans and treat them with some intelligence. If you're going to drop things into your story, like, oh, I don't know who my parents are, then you can't really blame the fan base for going, I wonder who her parents are, and kind of then speculating through all the characters and everything they know about the rest of the stuff as to who they might be. It's naive to assume that people wouldn't speculate on it. And if you're going to introduce a major character, or what appears to be a major character, like Snoke, who has, is the top Sith Lord, or whatever the Sith are after, the original films, people are going to go, well, he must be the son of, or the heir of, or something, and to just have him trashed as a character and effectively die without revealing anything. And in the case of Rey's parents, they were nobody. You can see why the fans get a little bit kind of antsy about that, because you've sort of not invalidated their expectations, you've just sort of ignored them. You haven't given a satisfactory answer to it either way, and not even really probably a believable answer, because you wouldn't get to be Snoke without having some sort of backstory that was significant. And Rey has this amazing ability to have the Force. That's got to have come from somewhere. You don't just get to be a Force user like that, according to the lore of Star Wars, without something weird having happened in your backstory. And it seems suddenly that it doesn't really have a backstory, which is a little bit of a weird thing. So maybe we'll get that in the third film. I don't know. It did feel a little bit strange to me, those kind of things. So in my case, going back to Shadewood in this particular case, with my characters, they have a backstory, and their parentage and their upbringing and all those sort of things. I've had to work out what happened in order for me to feel comfortable writing their characters kind of going forward from that point. You haven't seen any of that, and maybe you never will, because it may not be necessary to put it in the story, but it is there so that if somebody can reveal it, or one of the characters finds out a little bit more about themselves, there's a reason for it to be the way it is. So Star Trek, Star Trek, Star Wars did make me wonder a little bit about that. It felt very uneven to me. And the comment there, it makes you wonder if the writers of some of the new Star Wars movies had backstories for some characters. It does make you wonder, because those are sort of, they're to me almost rookie errors in good storytelling, which does kind of make me a little bit kind of spooky in terms of what were they doing? And Star Wars does have a lot of lore and establishment, and you break that at your peril, I think. And a few of the comments, certainly on The Last Jedi, about things like the hyperspace sort of terrorist attack at the end, where they hyperspace the ship in and destroy everything. That kind of does break the law a little bit, and I can see why people are kind of a bit like, huh? Really? Well, if they could do that, why didn't they do that before? That sort of thing. I think you've got to be very, very careful of. It's like in in Elite Danger, if you suddenly brought in the concept of a wormhole from one place in the galaxy to another, it would sort of trash the essence of some of what Elite Dangerous is, because Elite Dangerous is relatively short hops between stars in order to get anywhere. It's not like Star Trek or Star Wars, where you can go somewhere and then, however long that journey is, you then terminate that journey and you arrive. Elite is all about hopping from one place to another, and that's the way the game is. And if you break that, you take away some of the essence of what the thing actually is in the first place. So those sort of things you dick about with at your peril, really, because you're breaking your world, you're breaking the consistency of what you've already created in the past, and that can make people very uncomfortable. If you change the rules of your world during the story, then your fans are going to, particularly long-term fans who've been with a franchise or been with your stories for quite some time, are going to go, really? But that's not what happens in this world. It makes them feel uncomfortable. A comfortable thing that they're used to, and a comfortable experience that they're in, is taken away from them. Now, creatively, as a writer, you have a choice to do that, and I wouldn't say you can't. I don't like it, but other writers will be free to disagree, and you are free to disagree with me on that particular point as well. I don't like it. I would not do that to my readers. I wouldn't suddenly go in shade with, you know what? It's just magic fairy dust. I'm changing the rules, and she can have as much power as she wants because, hey, reasons. That feels to me like I'm shortchanging you and I'm shortchanging myself. I'm not going to break the rules I've set myself within the context of the books that I'm writing, because I want you to go, so that's why, and that's why, and that's why. I want you to connect the dots that I've deliberately left confusing, in the early books, in order for you to kind of speculate and enjoy the process of, is it or isn't it? That's why. I thought there was a reason. I got you on that one, Drew. Yes, I remember. I figured that one out. You get that enjoyment sometimes guessing where the authors are going, and sometimes not guessing where the authors are going, and that's an interaction between the author and the reader, which is fun. But if you're changing the rules of the game during the the art of reading and writing, then people are going to go, yeah, but you're just changing it. I can't guess because you're you're changing the rules of the game. So how can I possibly take part and actually enjoy? So be careful of that one. I don't like what they when people change the rules of the background. I think you change your world building at your peril, because I think it's a very valuable stone or foundation upon which to base your story. And Pagan Pride, welcome. Bloody hell, I really need to remember to set an alarm. I forgot you were streaming. It's the same time, same back channel, every week, 8 o'clock UK time. Although we'll have to just be careful of the time change. It will still be 8 o'clock, but it will be against the time change. So we'll soon be back to GMT rather than GMT +1. And so, Commander, if for instance you bring in something like, let's say, Hello Me Tech, you kind of mess with the law of the game. Yeah, see, Elite Dangerous example there, that one annoyed me, the telepresence stroke Hello Me stuff, because what it says in the lore guide, and this is no spoilers, and I don't think it's NDA at this point, is that it says quite clearly that there is low transmission FTL bandwidth. So you can send sort of text messages across the galaxy at super light speeds using some technology. It's not explored exactly how it works. but there is no high bandwidth FTL transmission. Can't do it for reasons. So it's still science fantasy, but that was the law of Elite Dangerous. So you could send some text comms to your mates, which obviously allow for the gameplay mechanic of wings and those sorts of things. Across the galaxy, there was a mechanism to do very, very basic text transmission. But in order to do telepresence stroke hollow me, you need massive, massive bandwidth that was effectively zero latency at any distance anywhere across the galaxy suddenly for the needs of gameplay. It would have been far better just to say, no, there is no law explanation for this at all. This is just a gameplay mechanic. We're not going to call it anything because it doesn't actually exist. This is just a way for your characters to interact, and we're not going to turn it into a law thing. But they tried to turn it into a law thing by calling it telepresence. And it can't work, because the moment you do that, you're going, hang on a minute, why would anybody bother going out in a ship at all when you can telepresence yourself into it? You take all the risk out of it about flying through space. Nobody would ever have to die, and maybe this is it, what's happened now. Nobody would ever have to die because you just telepresence yourself onto a ship. Every ship. Nobody would ever go and pilot a thing because it's highly dangerous. You might get shot down. So if you've got telepresence, why bother going on the ship in the first place? And if you've got telepresence, why does the ship need to have a cockpit? Because you don't need it, do you? If you're going to fly it, the ship doesn't need to have a cockpit. It just needs to respond to the telepresence controls. And the whole thing, when you start doing the why, starts to bust. And, from the original games, you did have a escape pod. It was something that you could buy, and you pressed it, and you saw your ship glide away. So, presumably that was the case. In Elite Dangerous, you just die and you respawn at the nearest point you saved. But we have seen in the the promotional videos and all the other bits and pieces that there is space legs. Our pilots have physical bodies in the ship, it would seem, and that's always been an assumption in Elite Dangerous universe. But telepresence mucks about with that and kind of makes you start asking, so if there's telepresence, why do we need to be on the ship? And if we've got faster than light communications all across the galaxy, why do we need to trade information between different places? Some of the missions don't make sense if you've got FTL comms anyway, So all those sort of things bust your consistency if you're not careful. And they would have been better off, in my humble opinion, not trying to lorify telepresence. Just don't call it anything at all. It's just a gameplay mechanic, in the same way that Wings was. So things like that you've got to be a little bit careful of, I think, because I think once you start undermining your world and mucking about with the law for sake of either, in the case of Elite Dangerous, gameplay mechanics, or in the case of a book, plot devices, or I'm going to make the story go in this direction because this is the sort of cool thing that I want to write, and I'll have to fudge my world building to fix it. Your players or readers or whatever it is will see that, and they'll be left with a slight sense of, this world isn't quite so cool as I thought it was. And you really don't want that as a player or a reader, because you're kind of almost shortchanging people a little bit. Put a little bit more effort into it and resolve the problem, and think, okay, well, if I do that, what happens to this and what happens to that, and what does that break? Do the why. Ask yourself, those kind of why questions, because it really is important. If you bust the foundations of your house, your house will start to, crack and split and bust. You don't want to mess about with your foundations once you build them. That's what they're for, is to keep the rest of the stuff up and keep it straight. So don't dig about with the foundations once you've built them. If you've got a flaw with your foundations, then you may have to work around it. But don't just, you see this a lot with reboots. They'll go back and reset the law. Now that is a reasonable thing to do. Frontier did do that a little bit with the Thargoids, for instance. So they kind of redid the first encounter of Thargoids and undid the lore from one of the previous games. And that's okay, as long as you're clear from the outset you're going to do a retcon or a retrospective continuity, as it's called, retcon. And if you're rebooting a franchise like Star Trek did and Battlestar Galactica and any of the others and that sort of thing, then be clear that that's what you're doing, so people know what to expect. Don't do it unannounced, because people can bring their expectations in, and then you can kind of really irritate people. Magnificent Maca, yeah, people know when they're being duped, and it's never nice. We know we're being railed due to writers. Okay, yeah, you don't want to do that. At least I don't think you want to do that. Now, some writers may be a bit more arrogant about it and go, right, well, I'm right, it's my story, I'm doing what I want. It's your choice. I tend to try and think about it a little bit more from the reader's perspective. I don't necessarily want people to feel, and this is a terrific one, I don't necessarily want people to feel comfortable with writing. You do want to surprise your reader, and you do want to make them think, and you do want to kind of give them that, oh, whoa, kind of moment, you know, the unexpected twist or all those sort of things. You do want that experience, and you want to get something across to them. You want to express how you feel about an issue or whatever it happens to be, get your point of view across. That's all the sort of things that you might want to do with your writing. But to do it by, you know, I'm going this direction and I'm going to tweak things just because, feels to me a bit amateurish. Feels like there's a slight lack of respect for the fact that, you know, people don't necessarily want to feel comfortable with the story, but they do want to go to a place that they enjoy being in, if that makes sense. So if we went into Lord of the Rings and Gandalf started chucking off magic spells in all sorts of directions, we'd kind of go, no, that's not what Gandalf does. Yes, he's a wizard, and yes, he uses magic, but he's actually pretty subtle in his use of magic. If you go through Lord of the Rings, one of the things that strikes you is, yes, he's a really, really powerful wizard, but you know, he has a crystal that he sticks on the end of his staff, which shines a light, does that. He faces off the Balrog, you know, and then falls in the pit. And there's one instance where, you know, he battles the ring wraiths with a sort of beam of light, described quite subtly in Lord of the Rings. A lot of the rest of the time, he's just fighting with a sword, and that's the sort of scope of his magic. He's not casting spells and pulling rabbits out of hats very much, you know, very often. He's quite a subtle sort of magic user, and if he suddenly went out of character, we'd be going, you know, what's going on here? Why has that changed? And you know, it's that sort of consistency across. And you know, the Elite Dangerous one was suddenly, so we have got FTL comms, or we haven't, or why have we got telepresence? Why would we be on a ship? If you're not careful, you can unravel the whole structure that underpins your environment, and people can be left thinking, oh, well, they don't really care about it, therefore I'm not really going to care about it. You know, and that's a good point, yeah, Pagan Pride. Yeah, Gandalf uses minimal magic, but you're left no doubt about his power. Yes, you know, that's the subtle cleverness about Gandalf as a character. You can tell he's almost wrestling in a sort of magical realm, almost off book, off film. Almost off stage. You can sense he has power, but it doesn't often show up as a physical manifestation. Probably the issue with game storytelling, it's like running an RPG. Players do unexpected stuff. That is very true, and it's very hard to do something compelling when they're running in all sorts of directions. And that's where your world building hopefully can help you out if there's some good stuff in there. Oh, game features need developing. Those have to be shoehorned into lore. Yeah, so I mean it is a tough one with game developing, but I think if you've got good, you know, it's about the amount of effort you want to put in. If you've got a cool game feature, you know, give it to the writers and the lore masters, people who understand the game, and figure a way of bringing it in such a cool way. Or if you can't figure a way of it, don't shoehorn it into the lore just because. You know, describe a way around a bit. Some of you may have noticed the way I dealt with telepresence in Elite Premonition is that I pretty much effectively ignored it. I think I'm just trying to remember what was the throwaway comment I made about it. Let's see if I can find it, because I didn't like it. I didn't think it fitted with lore at all, and so I made a positive decision not to include it. So let's go and see what I did, because I can't remember what it was now. Premonition final, probably that one. Let's have a quick look in here, because I did mention it. Presence. There we are. One match. So here's my way of dealing with it. Saffron hurriedly tapped the codes for her communication panel and was relieved to see her friend's face appear in view. There was some problem with the telepresence system, so they had to resort to vidcoms. So I've just basically said telepresence doesn't work. And that was it. That's the way to do it in law. I'm not trying to justify how telepresence works because I think it's mad. It shouldn't be in the law because it's not something that you can explain, and there's all sorts of problems with it from a law perspective. That's how I did it in premonition. Interesting thing about Gandalf characters, he's limited. Yes, characters must have limitations. They mustn't be able to go, I've got magic powers, so boom, you've gone. That's no good either. He's a Mayar, that's right, a high-level being in Tolkien's ranking of beings, but he's not right to the top. And yes, Tom Bombadil. Yeah, what was going on there? I think Tolkien must have been on something when he did the Bombadil bit. So yes, I was definitely tongue-in-cheek. Some problem with telepresence. I'm glad you spotted that. That's basically that. Yeah, there were a few little subtle references in premonition to things I didn't quite agree with in the law. So if you're reading them, you will spot them, and that was definitely one of them. There was a problem with telepresence. Yes, there was a problem with telepresence. You're quite right. It was wrong. It shouldn't have been done. And there we are. Anyway, never mind. Not much I can do about that. But you can world build and leave some things just generically roughed out and add the detail without much trouble. It seems like you would almost have to. Yeah, you do. You can't think of everything. And exactly that point is in Shadewood here. There's been a catastrophe in the past. Something's gone wrong. I don't know what it is yet. I know roughly what it is, but I haven't worked out the detail because I don't need to yet. So if you're like me, if you're a plotter and you know where your story's going, it's easier then because you can kind of do the world building around the edges of that plot, and you don't need to go too much further because you know what the limitations are. If you, however, on the other hand, are a pantster, i.e. you like to write by the seat of your pants, just see where the story goes, your characters and your imagination may wander off into some part of the world that you haven't built yet, in which case you may need to stop and do some world building. Depends on how you write and what you're kind of doing. So all of those things is where the art of writing kind of is a little bit vague because it depends on how you do it and the type of story you're trying to tell, whether you're doing an existing world or whether you're doing it in a fantasy world, how important consistency is to you as an individual. For me, it's very, very important. Other writers will go, I'll just make it up as I go along. And some readers will be okay with that, some readers won't be okay with that. And you've got to find what you're good at. From my perspective, I think that world building fits into characterization and dialogue and description quite well. They're all connected in the structure of a novel, and those kind of things are kind of important to kind of pull out. So it's all those things matter to me. I'm a bit anal about all these little details, which for me is fun. I do enjoy going, okay, so what about this and what about that? And I'll sit ruminating on something for a while, and then I'll go to sleep on it. And then I wake up and go, I've got an idea. I'm going to make that happen, and that's just going to be a thing in the corner of the world. All those sorts of things. I enjoy that. That's part of the creative process for me. Now, if you don't like doing that, then you're just not going to spend time doing it. So it depends a little bit on the kind of individual you are. A couple of other points while I'm thinking about them. Maps. Now, I love a good map. So inside here, you can see, I think this is, there we go. So this is one of the early maps I drew. It's not very good, so apologies. Let's just get that so you can see it. So this is an early map of Shadewood where I was working out a few bits and pieces. You can see that I did it on a piece of paper. Probably still got the original somewhere. I was working out some of the dynamics of how things work. So this is me working out how the navigation works. So it's kind of Great Circles navigation. So Shadewood is always away from this point down here, and Sunwood is always towards that point. And Sunright and Shaderight are directions which aren't necessarily the same direction in different places. So in different parts of the map, they're actually going to be at angles to each other because of the nature of the planet that you're on. And then I put in some rough, very rough, as you can see, mountain ranges and locations of cities, roughly where I wanted the sea, roughly where I wanted the island. And that was all I needed for the initial kind of kickstart of how I was working out. So this is actually the first map I ever drew of the Shadewood Saga. I can't quite, it's drewwagar.com, I can't see the date. This is probably early 2012 or thereabouts when I was working on this sort of stuff. So I'd been working around some of the ideas there. Tolkien obviously went completely insane with maps, so you've got maps for everything. He did a very detailed map of Middle Earth, which is great. Very good for storytelling, very good for world building. Because sometimes it's really good to just see the world that you're in and get a scale for it and how big it is. So I got a bit more sophisticated over time. So once I got to writing emanation, I had a basic map here. So I got a bit more detail. So this is actually the map of the entire planet. So I started looking at the city, the island of Amar here. I kind of worked out this was some sort of impact crater here, obviously flooded. And then roughly, again, where I wanted various other bits and pieces. And then there was an area here which would be covered by a kind of never-ending cyclone. It's quite difficult to get to, and there are a few other lands here which I've not referred to yet, and so on and so forth. So that was a slightly more expansive map, and I went through multiple iterations as people do, and then again you get a close-in map. This one was a bit more detailed. Sorry about the quality of the shot here because I've scanned this in from somewhere else. Where I started working out some of the names of the major land areas and started working out roughly where I thought cities would be useful and how you get to them. And then whether there be a delta here and a river, and why would you have towns and cities in various places and all that sort of stuff that you start working out, which is quite good fun. And it can just be an exercise in drawing maps, which actually is quite relaxing. I quite enjoy doing that. So, and then there's a few other bits and pieces that, these are different versions of the same thing, kind of exploring different ideas. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Lots of ideas here did get used. So the Isle of Amar is in the book. The Scalia is a place, Drem is a place in the book, but Plains of Frost was a bit too generic, and the Northian Mountains, that was a bit too generic as well. So a lot of these places got dumped as well, and a lot of these places don't exist in the book. That it was just me mucking about with ideas. So it's quite good fun. Terraform, I've not read your Shadewood story, sorry, but question, did you go into details about tidally locked in your story to explain readers about this navigation concept? Yes and no. I've told readers early on that it's a tidally locked world. There's a sort of prelude to the Shadewood saga, which is almost like a piece of prehistory, which kind of gives you a slightly more technical stroke sci-fi explanation of what's going on for a couple of pages, which sets the scenes, and it drops into the characters. And the characters themselves don't know they're on a tidally locked world. They just live there, and it's just normal to them. So you have to sort of see the tidally locked world through their eyes and through their descriptions of what things are like. So one of the characters, for example, is, draws the parallel between the fact that humans seem to have to sleep every so often, whereas all the other animals on the planet never do. And she just kind of thinks, well, that's a bit weird. I wonder why that is, which is a clue to you, the reader, that humans are not native to the planet and the animals that are around there are native to the planet through the eyes of an individual. But she doesn't know that there's a reason for that humans are different to the animals. She also notices, as she's getting older, that all the animals have 3 eyes and the humans only have 2. But the third eye on these creatures doesn't seem to do anything. It just stares up into the sky for no obviously good reason, which becomes important in the second book. And the characters just going, well, that's just the way things are. That's the way things have always been. That's obviously what normal is. Whereas you, the reader, know, well, that's a bit strange. So why is that? And you're left kind of with that. With the navigation, I've made some of the cultures basically, they have the limitations. So if you're stuck on an island on a tidally locked planet surrounded by water, you've got a problem, because if you go out of sight of the island, there's no way for you to navigate back, because even if you know the direction the sun is, the sun can move in the sky depending on your latitude and longitude, but you've got no way to distinguish them without some other geographical point. And if you've lost your view of the island, then that's it, you're stuck. You're never going to navigate your way back. So there's a culture of fear of sailing out of sight of land. And the way the inhabitants get around this is that they light fires on the coast. So there's a big plume of smoke going up so that ships can see the smoke even when they are outside of land, which means they can go fishing a bit further away from the land than they otherwise would. And that's, again, the course of the why questions. Why would they be doing, how do you therefore navigate around on a planet where you have got no markers? And there are ways of doing it that I had to go and work out. And I do refer to those in the story bit by bit to allow the the story to get more sophisticated, because I do have a need for some of the people to move around the planet, and it's not until they figure out the subtle art of navigation on the planet, having discovered some clues from a previous civilization that collapsed, that they're able to do it. But you introduce that into the story in a way that the reader's going, oh, how are they going to solve that? And you can't do that because, so how are they going to manage to, and then you get bits of the explanation, and I'm getting the reader, I'm not giving, it's the show don't tell thing that we've talked about before. Don't tell the readers the answer. Show them that there's a problem and then help them work through it. So in the course of the Shadewood 1, you learn how to tell the time and you learn how to navigate on this world, which otherwise at the beginning of the book, there is no way to do. So, all those sort of things are quite fun for you as a reader, hopefully, to kind of understand. And the characters work it out the same way, and you're going, yes, I figured it out, yes, great. So now we can go off and do that thing. So all that sort of stuff is quite fun. Yeah. So yes, I do, but don't just dump it into the story. I haven't done that. So I remember making a map of the fantasy world, created and wrote a few stories in. Took up to 8 A4s, but most have been lost. Yes, it's tragic. I've lost some stuff that I really wish I could find, and I know it's gone, unfortunately. It's a bit of a shame when you lose some of your previous work, because it's actually great fun to go back. I have got a file full of my old stuff, and a lot of it's rubbish, but some of it's actually not too bad. There's a few kind of good ideas in there. So if you do write stuff, for God's sake, don't get rid of it. Do keep it. It's much easier nowadays because we tend to dump it all on computers. So I keep everything. So here, if you look in my books folder, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I haven't published, all sorts of stories that you will probably never see the light of day. Terraformer was one I started. Metal was another one. Kid Townfall was another one. Family was another one. Exile's Return, Europa, Eurydice. All of these were stories that I've not finished, but I've got potentially some interesting ideas in them, all that sort of stuff. Pagan Pride, I would definitely recommend reading Shadewood. Oh, thank you very much. Currently waiting somewhat impatiently for book 3. Yes, I'm getting on with that. News about that in a couple of weeks, hopefully. So, yes, I am making a few changes, and some hopefully some cool stuff is coming your way. So, stay on that one. That's kind of good. So yes, so Shadewood 3 is absolutely my next priority, and I will be working on that. Wondering if you ever had readers send you a message with their own aha moment when they figured out all these hints you sent the right major title. Yes, I do get emails actually. Oddly enough, one of my favourite ones is about was about the tidally locked stuff. The fact I'd used a hot Jupiter in an inferior orbit to my planet to explain a couple of things, which again, if you read Shadewood, you'll find out about. I actually got an email from a proper PhD scientist who said, who read it, and he said, I suddenly realised, in reading a book that you'd done the science properly, which was quite nice for me. And he says, count myself a fan now, because just lovely to see the fact that you haven't cheated in your book. You've embraced the problems of living on this slightly strange, tidally locked world, and you found solutions to them that work, that actually are correct, with astrophysics. So he said basically thumbs up for that. I was really impressed when I realised what you'd done. And then I actually went away and did the maths, and you've got it right. He says, you might want to consider a few things here and here about this, but basically that works. So it's like, yay, thumbs up. So, that was quite nice. And actually, he's now sort of collaborating with me on other bits and pieces. He actually gave me a mention in his book. So he doesn't write fiction, he writes non-fiction, very, very scientific books about exoplanets. But he's sent me a few proofs of some of his upcoming work for me to use as kind of background research for what I'm doing. And he's given me a mention in his book as an example of where something that he's been describing as a complex astrophysics problem. He says, if you want to see how this might play out, go and read Drew Wagar's Shadewood book, because he uses a plot device in his fictional novel, which is quite cool. So sort of fiction and non-fiction kind of feeding themselves there, which is quite good fun. So that's kind of good. So yeah, Terraformer sounds. What was Terraformer about? I wrote that one yonks ago. This will be scary. Terraformer. 2012. Yeah, that one's pretty old. What's that about? Trying to remember now. Author's notes. According to file info, I started working on this one back in 2002. So the company predates Status Quo and Tor and blah, 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 blah. This was an attempt at more hard sci-fi, but having started, I realised I didn't have a good idea where the story was going. It's only 5 pages long. Maybe I'll stick it back up on my website at point. So some unfinished tales by Drew. That would be quite fun. I think what I was doing, I'm just trying to remember here. Yeah. So this was an attempt to have a society on a terraformed planet, I think, and they were kind of just about getting the place habitable as the story opens. After several generations of people living in kind of domes, they were just about at the point where they can get on the surface, and they get some transmission from wherever they started from, saying, "Oh, by the way, sort of effectively taxes are now due. We expect you to be contributing this back to the homeworlds, and basically this planet is kind of in an ecological place where if they do that, then they'll bust their terraforming. But they don't have they're militarily way outmatched by the might of the homeworld. So what are they going to do? And I think that was the premise I'd started off on, but I hadn't. He didn't figure out what the answer was. So that's sometimes I just have ideas, and sometimes you just start writing, and then you think, I'm not sure where this is going. You've got to play around with those kind of things. But I kept it. And the point thing is keep it, because you never know when you think, what was that thing I wrote about? It was quite a good idea for a plot, but I haven't resolved it, so I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go back and work that one out. The other things like what was your rope all about? So again, this one's look at that, 2007. My God, it's a long time ago, and that might not be the earliest one. So this one is some kind of natural disaster has largely removed advanced technology from the world. Only Europe is left. And the new Roman Empire has expanded from Rome using relatively primitive technology. It dominates and subjugates the rest of Europe, moving swiftly through Italy into France, Germany, Northern Africa, Turkey, and the Middle East. Scandinavia and Romania are falling as the story opens. Northern France has presented a greater obstacle. And basically, it looks like they're just about to go and attack England, and the British are going to stand up and fight. Something like that. So ships master attack Britain with huge armies with traditional weapons. So it's a sort of post-apocalyptic invasion thing I was having going on there. It doesn't look like I wrote a great deal about that. But an idea occurs to you. Think, I'm just going to tap that down, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. So some of them get developed more than others. But don't throw anything away, because you never know when it might be useful. So anyway, I should really summarise that. We've kind of overgone again. Oh, and I just missed someone there. Grim 060606. Hi, hello there, sir. Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. So you never know when something might be useful. That's good. So world building, you definitely need to do it, I think, and you should do probably a little bit more of it than you actually need to tell the story that you're in, because you might want to write a sequel, you might want to expand on something, or you might, in the course of writing your story, think, I need to do a little bit more about what's going on here. Then you go, why is that place like it is? Develop it. If you have a thing in your story that you need, and it is a certain way, use the 5 whys. Always use the 5 whys. Ask yourself 5 why questions about it. And if you can get to the end of 5 whys, then you've done enough world building. This is a trading port. Why? Because they don't have any good clothes. Why? Because they can't manufacture them here. Why? Because they haven't got the loom technology. Why? Because the economy's bad. Why? Because there's a big war 30 years ago. Okay, probably enough. Okay, that's enough for you to, work out that whether or not the thing you've got and you want as a plot device is actually sensible to have. Do that a few times around it. That helps you kind of justify, is there something there that's actually kind of got sensible. If you get stuck after 2 or 3 whys, you might need to think about it a bit more. It's my subtle suggestion for you. So give that a whirl. That's quite a useful tool. Do the bits that you find interesting. I've never gone and used built a language for my people. That just sounds like it just sounds horrible. I have no enthusiasm for writing another language like Tolkien did. That's where he started. That's the thing that kind of kicked off his whole thing. That was his thing. It's not my thing. It might be your thing. If it isn't, don't worry about it. If you don't like drawing maps, then don't draw a map. I like drawing maps. I find that quite therapeutic. It's just fun just drawing maps. Oh, I'm going to stick a forest there, and there's a mountain range, and let's invent a funny word in that. And there's a river going through there. I like that. I like maps. Some people love maps, some people don't. If you like maps, great. Go knock yourself out. That's cool. Do consider the geography. Do consider the history of the place. So if it's a trading city now, was it always a trading city? Or did something else happen to it? If it's a warlike city, for example, if it's got defences around it, why has it got defences? Why did they need to build defences? Was there a previous war? Is the political situation unstable, which means it's justified to put up defences? Because defences of a city in a fantasy novel, a massive investment of time and energy and taxes and slaves or whatever it is that helps build the walls. There's got to be an economic reason that you would do that, because otherwise, why would you bother? So the city must be under threat, or the political situation must be unstable. Why? Why? All those things. So your history and your geography should intertwine a little bit as to the reasons your place is in the way it is. So, in one of my stories, I've got a city which did have defences, but the defences have been left to fall down. So the city is in a ruinous state and quite hard to defend, which is an important plot device. Why? Well, the economy collapsed, and there was a war. The city was partially breached, but it wasn't completely overwhelmed. It was a sort of Pyrrhic victory on both sides of the equation. So do your whys and go back and work it out. If you're a plotter, plot around the edges of do the world building around the edges of the plot. If you're a pantster, you may need to kind of interpret that and work your world building around what you're actually trying to do. And for technical law, maybe the three hows. How does it work? Yeah, so if ships can hyperspace from here to there. How? Well, they use a sort of compression thingamajiggy through an extra dimension. How? Well, there's this technology that allows them to wrap this around and it works this whole way. Do a little bit, do the depth. And because, and the reason why would you spend all the time doing this? It makes your book better. And that's the bottom line. It makes your book better. Your readers will appreciate you going to that little extra bit of detail. And you can drop references to your world building into dialogue, into characterization, into little bits of backstory, into little bits of description. If you know the way your world works, you can get your characters to refer to it offhand. This city here is nothing like the other city that I was in 2 weeks ago. And your character and your reader will go, oh, that's interesting. So the other city is much more impressive than this one. That's interesting. And they'll put the things together. The same way if your characters refer to, yes, well, you weren't around in the XYZ wars of 30 years ago. What's so special about that? Oh, maybe I'll tell you that another time. You can get the old guy being a little bit mysterious to the young guys kind of thing. Yeah, well, you're young, you wouldn't understand. You can use that to drive your characters, and that can reference your world building if you've done the world building. So that's the sort of thing you can hook off. And your readers, I promise you, will pick up on it. And if you do it well, they'll go, this story feels like it's got all this amazing depth, and the description is work, and the characters are realistic. All of that stuff builds together to make that thing. If you don't do the world building well, people will go, yeah, it's not a bad story, but it doesn't feel like it's got much depth. It feels a bit thin. Characters are okay, but they're all a bit cookie cutter. All those things, you'll get those criticisms back. So world building really is the foundation, to my mind, of good story building. So, and it can, that's a good point actually. Sunseal's just made there. Thinking of plot holes now, it can help you avoid plot holes if you do enough world building that when the characters get to a place, you've already got that place figured out. Because then you haven't got to go back and go, oh, I forgot oops. So there we go. Oops, and I've definitely upset him now. First you burn my dinner, and then you accidentally rip my story to shreds. Sorry about that. That's it. Go back and do the world building. Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, you'll be fine. So all that stuff, really important foundation. That's what I would say about it. Do spend some time there because your readers will really appreciate it. They really, really will appreciate it. So, and we've been, blimey, I've passed. I'm supposed to do these for an hour. I'll get into trouble. So I better stop at this point, and we'll call a halt to proceedings. But that was good. We maybe do a bit more on this actually, because I didn't get through some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. So, and thank you very much everyone for the questions. It's really good to have all the interaction. So that's good. Yeah, you can, you can have your dinner after you fix your story. Yeah, get back to work, you. That's really cool. So again, thank you ever so much for coming along. We'll put out a topic, and maybe we'll do just part 2 a bit more world building, because there are some other bits and pieces I want to go through. So I think maybe we'll do part 2 of world building next week and see where we get to. And maybe need to make this an hour and a half all the time. Yes, you're probably right, because we're overrunning every single time I never get around. That's because I waffle. I like waffling, and hopefully you don't mind me waffling a bit too much. But we do have some good chat, some good interaction, so it's great. So yeah, leave that with me. I'll have a play around with that. But let's do a little bit more world building next week, because there's a few more bits I definitely want to go through and a few more examples I wanted to talk about. So that would be really good. So thank you very much. I'm going to go with right on. So let's just do that as a goodbye. Right on. So yeah, there we go. Let's right on. We'll definitely do it. Hope you found that useful. I'll pop it up on YouTube as per normal. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and all the kind of usual stuff if you need to. And I will see you once again next week. So that'd be really good. So carry on, right on, etc., etc. Have a good one. You take it easy, folks, and I'll see you soon.